They underestimated you. They thought you were ordinary, easily replaced. But now the silence you left behind is louder than every word you ever spoke. Have you ever poured out your heart, your time, your prayers, only to be treated like you were invisible? As if your kindness was just expected, like your presence didn't really matter? Here's the truth: you were never just there. You were heaven's placement, sent with purpose. They didn't recognize it. They didn't feel it, until you were gone. And once you stepped away, the light went with you. Now they're stumbling in the dark, realizing what they lost wasn't simply a person. It was a divine connection. This message isn't for everyone, it's for the few. The ones who blessed quietly in the background, but were rejected in the open. You didn't need a spotlight to change an atmosphere. Your spirit did the work. Your prayers built walls of protection they didn't even know surrounded them. And still, they treated you like you were disposable. But something shifted when you left. The air grew heavy. The peace vanished. And now they're being forced to face a truth they never wanted to admit: the chosen one has left. And with that absence comes spiritual drought. Because when you walk away, heaven's covering walks with you. You didn't lose. You didn't fail. You were moved by divine order, protected, repositioned. And now those who mistreated you are learning a painful lesson: not every blessing can be replaced. Chosen one, if this resonates in your spirit right now, declare it boldly in the comments. Drop a 99, because the 99 left behind will never feel whole without the one heaven has chosen. And if you haven't yet, hit the like button, subscribe, and make sure this message finds every chosen one who has been overlooked, misunderstood, and mistreated, but is now rising. Because what's coming next is a shift no one saw coming. They were waiting for something loud, something grand. A hero with titles, power, and recognition. But God doesn't move that way. When heaven wants to change an atmosphere, He doesn't send a celebrity, He sends a servant. And that servant was you. You didn't step into their lives with dramatic speeches. You didn't force your wisdom on anyone. You simply showed up, heart open, spirit aligned, ready to give without expecting anything in return. But they couldn't see what was standing right in front of them. Why? Because the world is blind to quiet greatness. They only notice what shines on the surface. But heaven hides its greatest treasures in simplicity. While they chased noise, you built peace. While they searched for leaders on stages, you were leading through actions, through patience, through silent prayers whispered in the background. You carried a light they were too distracted to notice, but that light was sustaining them. Every time you listened when no one else would, every moment you chose compassion over ego. Every time you stayed calm when others lost control, those were spiritual battles they never saw. You were a wall standing between chaos and peace. But they mistook your calm for weakness. They thought you were just being nice. But you were interceding. They thought you were too sensitive. But you were discerning. They thought you were passive. But you were fighting wars in silence, wars they never could have survived. Because God designed you as a quiet storm, gentle in appearance, unstoppable in purpose. They expected a warrior with a sword, but God sent them a peacemaker with a shield. And because you didn't arrive with applause, they overlooked you. But chosen one, hear this: invisibility was part of the mission. God often hides his strongest vessels in plain sight, only revealing their true weight when they are removed. You weren't there to impress them, you were there to shift the atmosphere, even if they never noticed. But now that you're gone, everything has changed. The peace lifted. The light dimmed. The stability they took for granted is breaking apart. Only now are they realizing your presence was never ordinary, it was strategic, it was divine. Because the way God uses his chosen is never what people expect. He hides diamonds in dust. He plants pillars inside those the world calls disposable. You were that pillar, holding up what they didn't even know was fragile. You didn't cry out for recognition. You simply stood firm, doing heaven's work in the shadows. But now your post is empty, and the cracks are showing. The foundation is trembling. The silence you left behind is shouting louder than your voice ever did. But here's the twist, your absence is not your ending. It is your unveiling. What they once dismissed as common is about to be revealed as the very thing they could never live without. So stay close, chosen one, because in the next moment, you'll see why the void you left isn't just emotional. It's spiritual. And that truth is about to shift everything. When you were there, life seemed easy. The atmosphere felt light. Relationships flowed. Opportunities opened. They thought it was coincidence, a good season. But they never saw the hidden force holding it steady. It was you. Your presence. Your alignment with heaven. You were the anchor no one noticed, the quiet force holding everything in place when it could have easily fallen apart. You didn't announce your prayers. You didn't demand recognition. While others laughed, you interceded. While they complained, you covered them. While they sought validation, you sought heaven's favor on their behalf. You were the unseen shield, absorbing storms before they ever arrived. But now that you're gone, the difference is undeniable. The arguments they once brushed off now leave scars. Conflicts that used to fade now grow into fires. The peace that felt natural has vanished. The truth is, you weren't just there, you were holding the spiritual order together. They never noticed, not until you left. Now the atmosphere feels heavier. Simple conversations collapse into silence. What once flowed with ease now grinds with friction. It isn't that life suddenly changed. It's that the covering was removed. When God places a chosen one in a space, that person carries heaven's atmosphere. You don't just walk into a room, you shift it. Your presence aligns things spiritually. But when dishonor enters, heaven withdraws what it once allowed. And that's exactly what's happening now. They underestimated you. They thought your absence wouldn't matter because they never understood what your presence was providing. They looked at your simplicity but ignored the authority you carried. Now the weight of your absence is crushing. The balance is broken. The light has dimmed. And they're realizing you weren't just helpful, you were essential. Every prayer you whispered, every relationship you covered, every situation you handled with grace, without it, everything unravels. Not because you cursed them, but because you were blessing them in ways they were too blind to see. Now silence is their teacher. Every obstacle reminds them of your absence. Every moment of chaos reflects the peace you once sustained. You never sought attention. You only wanted to serve. But the emptiness you left behind now speaks louder than any voice in the room. They used to say you were exaggerating. Now it feels deadly serious. They mocked your discernment. Now they crave the clarity you carried. They called you too much. But now they're suffocating in the drought you once quenched with your presence. And here's what they still don't see: your absence is not punishment. It's revelation. God is teaching them through distance what they refused to learn when you were near. And this is only the beginning. Because when heaven removes a vessel, it removes the access that came with it. They thought dishonoring you was just rejecting a person. But in reality, they were rejecting a divine connection. You weren't an accident. You were a vessel, an answer wrapped in humility. But when they dishonored what God sent, they activated a law they didn't even know existed. Not karma. Not human revenge. A divine principle: dishonor closes heaven's doors. That's why what once felt effortless now feels impossible. Why doors that opened freely are now locked tight. Not because of bad luck, but because dishonor builds a spiritual blockade. Where there was peace, tension now rules. Where there was alignment, confusion now takes over. You never wished them harm, but your presence was their covering, and they tore it down themselves. They didn't know that mocking your prayers meant mocking their own protection. They didn't see that their disrespect wasn't striking you, it was clashing with heaven. And when dishonor crosses heaven's limit, God doesn't roar warnings from the sky. He responds with silence. A holy silence that removes grace from places unwilling to honor His vessels. This isn't about pride. It isn't about proving a point. It's about divine order. And dishonor always disrupts divine order in ways the natural mind cannot grasp. God's chosen are His extensions on earth. To reject them is to reject His hand. The result isn't sudden destruction, it's a slow unraveling. What was once protected becomes exposed. What was once blessed becomes barren. Those who once felt secure begin to feel the cracks beneath their feet. But here's the part they never expected: the consequence isn't revenge, it's revelation. God sometimes allows environments that rejected His chosen ones to experience emptiness. So they finally recognize the value they once overlooked. But the longer pride sits on the throne, the heavier the consequences grow. They believe they could quietly dishonor you, speak in whispers behind your back, brush aside your worth with subtle disrespect. Yet dishonor, no matter how silent, roars loudly in the spiritual realm. It tells heaven, we don't value what you've given us. And heaven always responds. Peace begins to fade. Resources start to dry up. Opportunities freeze. Not out of revenge, but as a mirror of their own rejection. They broke the bridge. They severed the connection. And the very flow that once sustained them is now rerouted elsewhere. But here's what they never imagined: The blessing they disrespected is now being repositioned into places where it will be honored. And the loss they feel will become a permanent reminder: dishonor is costly. Painfully costly. Chosen one, hear me clearly, you were never the cause of their downfall. You were the gift they mismanaged. And as they now sit in the weight of their own decisions, God is writing a fresh chapter for you. A chapter where your worth will never again be questioned. But before you step into that new season, you must first recognize the silent power you carried. While they chased noise, you were moving mountains quietly. You didn't need a platform or spotlight. Your assignment was never about applause. It was about alignment. You weren't placed there to entertain, you were placed there to transform. And you did it in the strongest way possible, silently. While others fought for attention, you fought in the spirit for their peace. They never saw the battles you carried on your knees. They never heard the whispered prayers you spoke when no one was watching. But heaven heard. Heaven saw. And because of your faithfulness, things shifted. You never stood on a stage, you stood in the gaps. The cracks others ignored, you sealed with prayer. The wounds they laughed away, you covered with spiritual healing. Every place that was falling apart, you quietly held together. But they never noticed, because your strength was hidden and your impact veiled. That is the mark of the chosen. You don't enter a room to be seen, you enter and the atmosphere bends. You calm storms before they rise. You turn chaos into calm, sometimes with a word, sometimes with a glance, and sometimes simply by being present. But now that you've stepped away, the dominoes are falling. Conversations feel strained. Peace feels fragile. The unity they once enjoyed now feels forced. They don't understand why everything seems broken. But you do. You were the unseen shield, the unannounced intercessor, the one fighting silent battles so they could live in peace. You were the reason disasters never came. You were the reason opportunities kept opening. Not because you boasted, but because you quietly stood in the gap. Yet dishonor always reveals what was hidden. They mocked your discernment. They ridiculed your sensitivity. But now, they're desperately searching for the very thing they once dismissed. Your absence is echoing louder than your presence ever did. They called you too serious, but now they are drowning in chaos you used to absorb. They said you overthink, but now they make reckless choices with no one left to bring balance. They underestimated you because they never saw what you carried. But the enemy saw. The spiritual realm saw. That's why you were attacked so often. That's why you felt the heaviness, the exhaustion, the invisible resistance. Because while they lived in comfort, you were fighting storms, victories that had your name and theirs written on them. But true servants don't announce their battles. They just win them, quietly. Now that you're gone, they're beginning to realize, you weren't just there. You were the one holding the very structure of their lives together. Every chain you broke, every prayer you whispered, every spiritual atmosphere you shifted, they never had to face those battles because you carried them. But now, the air feels heavy. Conversations feel shallow. relationships feel fractured. Because the one who silently held it all together has been removed. And here's the mystery they cannot solve: how can someone so quiet, so ordinary, leave such a massive void? The answer is simple: heaven placed you there as a strategic anchor. Not for recognition, but for preservation. And when dishonor collides with divine assignment, God always protects his vessel. Sometimes that protection comes in the form of removal. Chosen one, you were never their problem. You were their shield. And now that the shield is gone, the impact hits directly. Every ripple of your absence reveals a truth they were never ready to face. But this story isn't finished. Because in the next moment, you'll see why humility is the only key left to repair what dishonor has destroyed. The question now is, will they realize it before it's too late? Or will the weight of their own pride keep them locked in a cycle of consequences they never expected? There is one key that can open every door pride has slammed shut. A force so powerful it can end spiritual droughts, heal broken atmospheres, and restore everything that dishonor destroyed. But it's not a clever plan. It's not a strategy. It's humility. The only way to repair what has been shattered is to bow in the very place ego once stood tall. Humility is not just saying, sorry. It's not a shallow apology to check a box. Real humility is deeper, it's surrender. It's courage. It's the willingness to admit, I was blind. I misjudged. I dishonored the very thing heaven sent to help me. And that level of truth is rare, because the world teaches the opposite. The world teaches people to cling to their pride, to defend their opinions, to never admit when they are wrong. But heaven doesn't move through pride. Heaven flows through humility. When they rejected you, chosen one, it wasn't just you they pushed away. They cut themselves off from the very flow of God's hand that was working through you. And every dry season, every blessing that stopped the moment you left, is now testifying to this truth. Pride will always bankrupt what honor was meant to multiply. Yet restoration is never too far. It is only one decision away. One moment of humility can unlock what pride has kept in chains for years. But humility is like a mirror. Most people are afraid to look into it, because it reveals the places ego tried to hide. It breaks the illusions. For those who mistreated you, it will take everything in them to finally admit. That quiet presence I dismissed was a covering from God. That gentle voice I mocked was a prophetic guide. That person I thought was too much, was the very one sent to hold my life together. But here's the cost: humility demands their pride. And not everyone is willing to pay that price. If they cling to pride, the emptiness will grow, the weight will deepen, and dishonor will keep echoing through their lives. But if humility finally breaks through, healing will rush in. Because God does not withhold restoration out of revenge. He waits for alignment. He waits for hearts to bow, for eyes to open, for hands to let go of arrogance. And the moment humility enters, blockages dissolve. What was heavy becomes light. What was stuck begins to flow. For it is written, God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. Chosen one, remember this: you are not the one who must beg for recognition. You were faithful. You carried out your assignment. Now the choice is theirs. And that choice will decide whether they stay in drought or step into restoration. But there is something they don't yet see. Humility doesn't just fix the past, it opens a future they never imagined. Because the moment they finally honor what they once rejected, heaven responds with multiplication. The peace you carried returns. The blessings delayed are suddenly released. And it all comes down to one act of courage: humility. So will they bow, or will they break? The time for pretending is over. The silence has revealed the truth. Only humility can rewrite their story now. But before this chapter closes, chosen one, you must hear this. Your absence was never the end of your story. It was the beginning of your elevation. Yes, they rejected you. They underestimated you. They ignored you and treated you as replaceable. But heaven never let you go. What they threw away, God called a promotion. What they saw as the end, heaven marked as the opening of your next stage. Your absence has become a divine stage where your purpose will be honored. What once overlooked you will now feel the weight of your mission. What once pushed you aside will now witness how God raises you in places where your worth will not only be seen, it will be celebrated. The emptiness they feel today is not punishment. It is an echo, the echo of what your presence once held together in silence. And while they wrestle with loss, you are being prepared for realms where your essence won't be misunderstood, where your light won't be dimmed, where your mission won't be sabotaged. You were never created to blend in. You were created to shift atmospheres, to open doors invisible to ordinary eyes. And now heaven is positioning you on platforms where every word you speak will carry eternal weight. They thought your departure would silence you. But heaven never stopped amplifying your voice. So remember this: you are more than what they saw. You are more than what they understood. You are a vessel, a weapon, an instrument in God's hands. And your season of hiding is over. This is the unveiling. The world has yet to see the fullness of what you carry. But very soon, doors will open that only open for those who endured the pain of being misunderstood. So lift your head, chosen one. Strengthen your spirit. What God is about to do through you will be impossible to ignore. If this message stirred something inside you, declare it in the comments. I was the blessing they rejected. Write it, because your testimony will awaken countless others who were dishonored but are about to step into restoration. And before you go, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it. Because this is not just your story, it's the story of every chosen one the world failed to value. Get ready. Recognition is coming. Your mission does not end here. It is just beginning. And this time, no one will be able to dim your light.